Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be working on a mixed media canvas. I have wanted to try out a project like this for a while now, and as I had a bunch of supplies left over from a card making video I did a couple of weeks back, I thought that I would give this project a go today. Most of the supplies that I'm going to be using in today's video were sent to me by the InloveArt shop. They are an online shop supplying lots of scrapbooking, mixed media and card making supplies. They have pattern papers, stamps, stickers, dies for die cutting machines, lace paper cutouts and lots more. Everything is very affordable and they also have free worldwide shipping. This is not a sponsored video, but they were kind enough to send me along a variety of supplies to use. There are links to all the products that I've used today from them in the description box below, as well as a link to the InloveArt shop, and they've also provided a coupon code. I have here an A4 sized wood canvas, and I'm starting out by painting on a thin layer of white gesso. This will help to prime the wood, to provide a starting point for the mixed media, and I also wanted a white surface to work with. It can be hard with this type of project to know where to start, so I felt that the best thing to do was to start gluing down some paper and create a little collage, and then see where to go from there. For the whole process today, I'm working one step at a time and not thinking too far ahead, adding something, seeing how it looks, and then adding more if I think it needs it. For most of the papers, I'm tearing them up into smaller pieces because I feel that the torn edges look nicer here in the collaged background. I ended up using 2 regular pieces of pattern paper and then also one that had gold foil highlights. I'm sticking to a general colour theme of this piece, light blues, pinks and a little grey and gold. Once I had that first layer of paper down, I decided to add a few of the vellum stickers. This is the second video I've made with the supplies that the InloveArt shop sent to me, and I'm not going to go through all those supplies in depth in this video, but if you would like to see everything, then I'll leave a link to my previous video in the iCards, and I went through most of the supplies they sent me in that video. I particularly liked the vintage feel of these stickers, and as they're see-through they provided an extra layer and some more texture to the background here. Next I added in some stamping using the bricks background stamp and some sepia ink. Because the canvas surface was uneven, I didn't get a perfect impression, but that really didn't matter. At this point I was mainly aiming to create lots of texture with different layers, and I also added a couple of smaller stamps in as well and just randomly placed them all over the canvas. I decided then to add another layer of the white gesso, and this is to help blend the different elements together and to knock the background back a bit. I still want bits of the different layers and elements to come through on the finished piece, but I also wanted the foreground elements to stand out from the background, so a thin layer of gesso placed lightly here and there will help. After the gesso was dry, I wanted to add a little bit of extra colour, so I brought out a few of my distress Oxide inks and added them to the canvas, starting around the edges of the canvas and then brushing them inwards. I also wanted to highlight the paper layers, so I brushed a little ink along the collaged lines. I then brought over a new stencil that I have and added some of the pebble pattern across the canvas with some white texture paste. Next, I brought out the various papers again to find a few to create a base for the focal cluster on the canvas. I picked out a couple of different background papers and started to cut them into different shapes and sizes. Some I tore into little pieces, others I cut into banners and rectangles, and I wanted to have a collection of different paper cutouts to build up on the canvas. I always like to vary the sizes and shapes when I'm working with a collection of elements, as I find that this looks much nicer in the end. I also stamped out a few of those little shapes again and cut them up to use as embellishments. I then started to arrange everything on the canvas, building up the cluster base, and when I had all the pieces mixed up and arranged the way that I liked, I attached them all with 3D foam squares. I wanted to make a very three-dimensional effect for the focal cluster on this canvas, so using the 3D foam squares helped to raise everything up off the surface. I also scattered around a few of those little cutout elements as well. I then added some lace paper cutouts. I used these as well in a previous video, and they're one of my favourite supplies from the InloveArt shop. I love how delicate and dainty they are. I glued down a large leaf and a couple of plants around the cluster. Now it was time to add in all the flowers. I have a collection of various paper and fabric flowers, and I've had them in a box for a while, and this was a perfect project to use them all on. I'm using hot glue to attach them all, and I'm just placing one down at a time, mixing them up so that the different colours and different types of flowers were varied across the cluster. Once the larger flowers were glued down, I added in the smaller ones, placing a little bit of glue onto the end of the stalks and tucking them into the arrangement. And I'm using hot glue here as it dries almost immediately, and it will hold the flowers much better than the liquid glue I normally use. I then wanted to bring back a little bit of the gold that I had earlier in the papers, and a little bit of the gold was still showing through the gessoed layers, but I wanted to highlight that a bit more. So I took this sheet of gold foiled vellum and cut out a few of the leaves and plants to add to the arrangement. Next I cut 3 little strips of lace and added them in as well. I also found a few sequins and added them. At this point, I am really just adding little bits and pieces until I feel that it's all finished. It can be really hard to know when to call it done and when to stop adding bits and pieces to the mixed media. But what I try to do is get to a point where I feel that it's complete, and when I feel that if I add anything else to it, it will be too much. At this point, I decided that the canvas could use a title. So I used this stamp set here to create the word magic, cut out the letters, and then attach them to the canvas using the 3D foam squares. I liked the contrast of the large, bulkier letters with the softer feel of the canvas. Next I added the lace paper butterfly to the cluster, and this was my main focal image. It was one of the main supplies I wanted to use, and I built up the flowers so that the butterfly could rest on top of them. When I was putting together some supplies to use for this canvas, even though I wasn't sure of the exact steps I was going to take, I tried to separate one element out and know that that was going to be one of the main elements that I wanted to stand out at the end, and the butterfly was this main element that I really wanted to shine on the finished canvas. And that is my finished mixed media canvas. This was a little bit of a different project for me today, and I really enjoyed working on something that was a little bit larger in scale, and I loved working in lots of layers and really experimenting with different supplies, textures and materials. And I really wanted to try and incorporate lots of different textures into this, the fabric, the lace, the papers, the glues, the stamps. I just really wanted to play around and experiment and see if I could bring all those different types of supplies together to form a cohesive looking piece. One of my favourite things about the project today was adding in the paper and fabric flowers to the canvas. It's something that I very rarely do, and it was lots of fun to use them on this project today. So thank you to the InloveArt team for sending me along some of the supplies that I used today. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, leave any questions in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching and have a creative day.